Hello, everybody, and welcome into the new look Esports Update, formerly known as Esports Weekly. I'll be your host, Ryan Bailey, as per usual, but we're going to have a slightly different look this year. Last year, Esports Weekly went through a bunch of changes, and I think a lot of them went really, really well, but we want to do something different this time around. We want to go with something a little bit less regimented, so to speak. So every other week is going to be the big deal. That's why it's not Esports Weekly anymore. Esports Bi-Weekly was trademarked or something like that. I don't know. That was the legal department. So Esports Update is the new look for it. Every other week, every other Wednesday, opposite of patch notes. So one Wednesday you'll get patch notes, next Wednesday you'll get Esports Update. We're going to be going over all the stuff that you should be looking forward to and the stuff you may have missed, but only over a half-hour period, not that full hour, and not every week. So we're going to be a lot more selective on what we're talking about. Unfortunately, we won't be able to go over every single game, but them's the breaks, I suppose. We'll have a lot more cool content, though. Right over to my left, we've got a sweet telestrator. We're going to be using that later on in the show. We've got a lot of great ideas that I think we're going to make Esports Update a great show that you'll really enjoy, just a little bit different than Esports Weekly from last year. But before we get into our predictions for Season 7 and all that kind of stuff moving forward, we got to look back at what Zapman did last year, and that was SK Gaming in their victory run at the World Championship. Look, SK Gaming wins an incredible, unlikely World Championship. A team that was 7th place all year long, consistently beating the bottom teams, looking good but not good enough against the top teams, somehow put it all together for a magical run one weekend at DreamHack Atlanta. It was an incredible story and one that I'm sure Smite fans will never forget.
All that was left for the Cinderella team was the most consistent 2 players over the last 2 years, Polar Bear Mike and Panda Cat of Rival. The overall #1 seed for the year, Rival had been dominant. They even made quick work of both Dignitas and Sanguine on their path to the final. But what had seemed like a dream for SK up until then was starting to seem more and more like destiny. Zapman, who had never made it to a Worlds final in all his time playing, up against Captain Twig, who'd made every single LAN he was capable of qualifying for. Zapman would open strong in the finals though, working together with Neil to find a huge turnaround play in duo. The grizzled vet may not have been there before, but he sure played like putting on an on-her clinic. Belair, his trusted solo laner, would seal that game 1 up with a huge triple kill to put them up 1 game over the tournament favorites.
Not even close to done.
Game 2 would see the momentum swing quickly back the other way, despite a solid effort from Zapman on one of his vintage picks in Apollo.
Oh, that's not saying, let's play, boys! It's game time! And he's looking for more, too. The 3v2, Zapman! Whoa!
20 minutes on the clock, and Rival had suddenly tied the whole setup. That meant that Game 3 felt like the decider match. This is going to be the huge momentum shift. And despite really strong play from Sam on Thor, Rival managed to have control of the game towards its later stages.
And this is exactly where Rival want to take a fight.
No relics for Paul in the jungle, remember, but Twig taking a ton more damage than bargain for. Belair has to ult away from safety. Captain Twig, though, in no man's land. Neil might be able to get him with a roar, but Mike's there with a big ultimate to save his life. Zap into the fray, though, but keep an eye on Zap. No relics for him.
Look at Paul. Look at Paul. He's coming around the back. He's doing so much damage to Fight. Okay, he's got him.
And Belair just teleported back into the fray. Twig falls down. No!
But time after time, Rival struggled on their Phoenix Siege until Captain Twig would get picked. A scattered Rival had their numbers cut to 2, and an attempt at a Hail Mary Titan push was their best play to try and end the game. But always ready, Sam and Neil Mod defended it perfectly, allowing for a surprise come-from-behind win for SK. One of the best you'll ever see in Smite.
I don't believe what I've witnessed him! How did they manage that? That is a motivation killer for Rival! What a play!
After that big play, the entire arena rallied around the underdogs, and what had been a close set fell into the grasp of Sam for Soccer and Zapman. They controlled the map in Game 4, especially Zapman. After a season of being 7th place, this squad overcame every prediction and a brutally stacked bracket to claim their rightful place as your Smite World Champions.
It's gonna be done! SK Gaming! They are your season 6 World Champions!
look, I've seen a lot of SMITE World Championships, 6, in fact, up until this point. Last year's was an incredible energy. I mean, look, they're all great in their own way. That might have been my favorite SMITE World Championship yet. Of course, we've got more coming in the show, but coming up after the break, we're going to be going over some of SK's incredible comebacks. That was a big story for them all tournament long. It was that they would get down and then make these incredible comebacks, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Also, don't go anywhere during these commercial breaks, because instead of the traditional commercials, you might not be familiar with the Season 7 Pro League teams quite yet. We got you covered. We've made videos for every single team going over their rosters. These will just be short snippets of those videos. If you want to see the full versions, you have to go to our YouTube at youtube.com/SMITEPro. But here's a quick look at PK, starting off, the defending world champions, -1/+1.
I feel like it's really easy to overhype this Knights team because of the defending world champion. You gotta remember, they were 7th place all of Season 6, like consistently hard stuck 7th place, where they would stomp 10th, 9th, and 8th, and they were competitive up against 1 through 6, but they weren't consistently beating out those teams, and that's why they ended up being, that 6th place, 7th place team throughout the entirety of that year. It was a pretty clear divide, but if you really want to be a consistently good team, you got to be able to kind of shed that baggage that you're taking of being that 6th and 7th place team from last year. I think they have a really good chance to do it. Hard to believe that you could drop Sam for soccer and maybe even be better, but I think Kibo Fred's just that good that this team actually might be in a better spot. Factor in that Paul might be in shape to return to form. We might see the best security that we've ever seen. And I think this team can make some noise, but if I'm being honest, I do expect them to be a middle of the pack team again, somewhere around 5th or 6th place, something like that, but hopefully they come out and prove me wrong.
All in all, Ghost Gaming is probably, I would say, a dark horse, but I think a lot of people can see the talent that they all have on paper here of this squad. It's a pretty damn good squad. I don't really think they've got a really weak role. If anything, it's probably Big Man. But then again, Big Man's had a pretty good year past few years, so I guess they don't have a weak roster. This is one that, in my opinion, is probably going to be a slow burn through the start of the year, and then as we get towards Phase 2, we'll see how bright this team can shine.
Welcome back to Esports Update, everybody. SK Gaming's Run to Worlds was all about their comeback potential, whether it was down 2-0 against the Renegades in the semifinals or down an infinite amount of gold, it felt like, against Rival in the actual finals. SK always found a way to bring it back and find that victory. And that's what TFB, Teamfight Breakdown, is for. We're gonna go over some of those biggest plays. First, we're gonna start in the semifinals, up against Renegades. This is game 4, so they were down 2-0, they've won game 3, and you can start to feel momentum in the building shifting towards SK, but it's all centered around this Fire Giant fight late in the game, in game number 4. Already a couple ultimates on cooldown. Dardez's ultimate is on cooldown, as is Neil Muzz, and that's a big deal because Neil's gonna get isolated by a pretty good Persephone ult. I think Funballer's ultimate selection here is totally fine because it's gonna catch Neil Ma and set up Dardez to do a ton of damage to him. One thing I do wanna point out right away is look at where Sam for Soccer is over here on the right-hand side. Very, very isolated in comparison to everybody else. So Neil gets ulted. We're totally cool with this ult because it sets up Dardez for a ton of damage and it locks down Belair right here. It makes sure that Belair is gonna have to use his ult if he wants to end up escaping in this team fight. Go ahead and roll it. Sam also does a great job on this right side, by the way, right here, of ending up putting Raffer in combat. Neil gets away, Belair has to ult. So with Belair having no CC immunity, no beads, he's a solo laner, Raffer's gonna try and set him up for a full combo with this Cataclysm, but Belair blinks it. And then not really a bad play by Raffer, just a good play by Belair in that moment. So now Renegades have control of the pit. It's their decision on what they wanna do. Do they wanna pull this Fire Giant? Not really, because Raffer is a little bit too low, Nika's a little bit poked, and Cherry's gonna find a pretty decent engage at this moment. Paul blinks out of range of that Cobra's Kiss, but they all in commit onto a Jing Wei. Zap had both relics going into that team fight, and Neil got his ultimate up in time. They probably thought that his ultimate was gonna still be down. Actually, let's rewind it. I was talking a little bit too much. We missed the good part. My fault, everybody, my fault. All right, pause it right here. Okay, a little bit more forward. This is all on me. Sorry, Jordan. A little bit more. Give me a little bit more. Okay, right here. Perfect. Look at where everybody is looking from Renegades. Cherio and Nika still looking at the back line. Neil is able to isolate himself all the way out here, so no one's going to catch him. And Belair has both Carries and Raffer's attention all right there. And Sam has not been a part of this fight at all quite yet, and he's going to be able to get a beautiful flank in on the back end of this team fight. So go ahead and roll it in slow motion. Belair does his job perfectly, keeps the front line distracted. Sam comes in, finds a beautiful double wind siphon, insta-kills Dardez off of it. Dardez had both relics, didn't get a chance to use either one. Funballer uses the Aegis, but it really just delays the inevitable. And the target selection at the very beginning of Cherio going for Zapman ends up really coming back to bite Renegades here because Paul's able to come in and clean up this team fight much more easily than Zapman could have. It also means that Zapman can rejoin and help push towers to end the game much more easily than a Merlin could have. But this play by SK and by Sam and Paul in particular was absolutely huge, but it's gonna look like it's all Sam and Paul in that play. Belair deserves a ton of credit. He distracts the entirety of Renegades and allows Sam to come in and make a huge play. Paul's able to follow up off of that nicely. And thus, SK win the game off this push, and they win Game 5 and move on to the finals where they face off against Rival, who is the subject of our next play. And Rival, look, it looked like they were going to be able to run away with this Game 3. It seemed like it was going to be an easy win with the gold lead. I mean, they're up by how much at this point? But look at how SK defends this push. This was really, really awesome, I think, in order to watch. On the right side of your screen right away, we notice Captain Twig over here by himself. This has been pretty common in Season 6, the 4-1 split. But SK do something very differently. They're going to set up their defense in an entirely different way. They leave the two frontliners, Neilma and Belair, alone, and they send 3 over to stop Twig, to force him back. This means that Final K knows this is a good time to get frisky, to get in there and get engaged. And so everyone starts coming back from SK. Rival makes the right choice. They're not here, let's start pushing in. But pause it right here. Let's pause it. As soon as they get towards this area right here, where it's Paul, Zap, Sam, all their attention is focused onto this Rival team. Rival, their draft isn't great at taking these Phoenixes, so that's why SK knows that they've got time to do this sort of feint, to move over to the right and then come back towards mid, because Arkel's playing Uller, a hunter that's not great at killing these Phoenixes. And this attention by SK pulls Captain Twig in, because he thinks the full engagement's about to start. So he gets baited in, and they pull him a little bit too far. Go ahead and roll it. As you'll see, Paul uses a non-committal ability, Zap throws a couple autos out, and then immediately the full commit onto this right-hand side. Sam stuns, Paul jumps in, Zap dashes, and this forces Twig's ultimate. What this is gonna do, go ahead and pause it right here. What this is gonna do is force PBM over this way. He comes underneath this way and has to respect all this damage coming from Paul and Zap and Sam. He has to respect all that damage, right? So Final K and Arkil still think that they've got a window. They just use Paul's ultimate, Paul's dash is down, so is Zap's. We can go in on this mid Phoenix. But if you go ahead and roll it, you'll see that Neil Ma finds a beautiful engagement just to force everybody off this Phoenix. He forces Arkil back, forces him into that axe stance, and is able to keep everybody back. Then, pause it. Belair. This is, when I talk about team fights, you'll hear me say 2 phrases a lot, and that's tank switching and backline peeling for one another. This is the perfect example of tank switching. Neil Ma goes in, gets axe stunned, immediately out. As soon as that axe is down, as soon as the big cooldown that the carry needs to peel for himself is down, Belair in, immediately on top of Arkil, and all Belair's job is here is to get beads. Because what is Panda Cat gonna do? Panda knows that Neil's no longer the threat. He already blinked in and used some abilities. So he doesn't have to worry about him, he has to worry about Belair. So as soon as Panda Cat uses his cooldowns, including the change stance, that's gonna mean that Neil Ma is gonna be able to come in very easily and find another initiation after the fact as Belair, you guessed it, heads on back once he absorbs those cooldowns. Go ahead and roll it again. Paul's gonna try and put out a little bit more damage with that Taiko drums. Up in the air goes Sam. And as soon as Belair gets beads, he's out of there. He immediately backs up and takes the attention away. A perfect ultimate by Neil, picks up 2, a sick execute onto the res target that PBM was trying to do, a double execute for Belair. Go ahead and pause it here. Panda Cat's positioning in this fight is phenomenal. He had already flickered out of the initiation from Neil Ma. He backs up, And then as soon as he realizes, as a backliner, you have to realize what's happening in the team fight. You have to read it. In a lot of fights with less stakes, late game, right on the Phoenix line, you've already got a Phoenix down over here with Fire Waves pushing. You're going to get this Phoenix. A lot of mid laners would back up in this moment. But Panda knows this is a potential game-losing fight. So he goes all in, and he plays this really, really well. He ends up getting a double kill, ends up killing a third, but this dash from Zapman is to interrupt the frame one flamethrower from PandaCat that was going to do a ton of damage. Insane. Just an insane mechanical play. Zap and Paul able to clean up Mike for the full deicide, but take a look. Too many fire minions coming in from both sides. That Titan too low, no way that these two alone can go and end the game. Which leads us to our last play of the episode. It's going to be just a few minutes later, about a minute later from this, is the game-deciding fight between these two. This is winner take all around this Gold Fury. Take a look before we even start at the relics. Beads Aegis down right here for Paul. Beads Aegis down for Arkil. Beads Aegis down for Zap. So these are risky fights that you're going to be taking at this point, but you don't really have a choice. SK knows they can't take the fight around their Titan. Look at how low it is. They have to take a fight in this area. Go ahead and roll it. I already talked about tank switching. This is the perfect example of backline peel for one another. Sometimes CC isn't what you need for peel, you just need damage. Osiris isn't going to respect a whole lot of CC because he's got so much damage reduction and can just kind of walk through it and use that ultimate. It's really the damage is all you need. Captain Twig goes on to Paul. Again, we know Paul has no relic, so Twig forces the jump immediately up into his ultimate. Now, Belair is keeping everybody busy. All the damage dealers busy. Pause it right here. Take a look at how isolated this fight is over here from this fight. This fight is totally different than over here, and Neil is the one caught in between. He's got the option at this point. Do I go help my carries, or do I go help my front line? Sam, again with really, really good assassin positioning, is in lane right there, ulting his Thor right away. So Belair's job here is to just keep everyone else occupied, where Zapman and Paul are peeling for each other. Look at how far apart they are, but they're in the same engagement. That's the big thing. They're on the same targets, they're in the same engagement, but there's no way someone can hit Zap and Paul. So Final K has to make a choice, Captain Twig has to make a choice, and that's really hard to make the enemy dive do. Go ahead and play it from here. Twig's gonna end up getting really, really low. PBM's gonna end up saving him with that ultimate. And then perfect target switching. As soon as Captain Twig gets around that corner, we're on Final K, because that's where our buttons can hit easily at this point. Belair's able to get out. That's a big deal right there, because he's gonna teleport back in momentarily. And now the fight is really split. Rival doesn't really know where to go. PBM's like, I kinda gotta get over to Final K, but Fine's already a little bit too low. Neil Ma still has ultimate. He's been very patient with it. And Neil just finds a beautiful engagement, is gonna find a huge ultimate in just a minute, but Paul's chased Final K all the way down. Neil hits a 4-man horrific emblem, which is absolutely massive to do in the late game. This is where you peel with your team really, really well. And SK just did it over and over again. And what do you know? Another example of tank switching. Neil finds the ultimate, immediately escapes to the right. Belair, he goes this way, Belair comes in this way, and ends up cleaning up Arkil. Now Panda and PBM try and make a sick play. They try and go and kill a Titan, but SK defends against that well enough, and they end up winning this game. A huge comeback, an unlikely comeback on the World Final stage, and it sets up for a World Championship victory. If you want to know more about team fighting, watch SK's run at Worlds. Incredible stuff by them. Their defenses all year long were impressive. This was another level. They played really, really well all weekend and won a World Championship. We'll be talking more about them and other teams moving forward as we move forward here in Esports Update. Stay tuned.
I know that I said a lot about the question marks with Captain Twig in mid, but do not get me wrong with this rival team. This is a top 3 team easily. That's what their expectation should be, and that's where they should end up this year. And I think as long as they play their game, you know, they're playing through Sam for Soccer, they're allowing PandaCat just kind of on an island in a long lane to do his thing, then I think that they're gonna have a chance to be right back where they were last year. I know that they, you know, fell a bit short when they ran into SK at Worlds, and they're not happy with that, but that season they had in Season 6 is absolutely one to be proud of and to build on coming into Season 7. They're gonna be a team to watch out for sure.
Obviously, this is the same roster heading to Season 7 that Renegades had previously, but now it's under the Space Station banner. The only real difference is vote for Funballer, and that could be, well, decision-making in the team fights. Is it that going to be down to God picks? I think the one thing you're going to see with this roster, though, is the highest amount of chemistry with them carrying on into next season. Obviously, this was a team that was put together previously in Season 6, and they had to get to grips with what they wanted to do as a team. They flourished, but I think they'll flourish even more going into Season 7.
A lot of the times with the Knights or with Rival, Vogt just kind of did his own thing, and he should be able to do that same thing here in Season 7. And then the rest of the Space Station squad, you know that synergy is there. Raffer playing at an elite level from the support role. Dardes with pressure in mid. Cheerio being that Swiss Army knife, whatever you need from him, he's willing to plug and play it. And then Nika being a monster in the solo lane. I see no reason why this can't be a top 3 team at the very least, if not just the best team outright. I'm keeping my eye on Space Station.
Welcome back, everybody. Season 7 brought a ton of changes, but let's keep it to what I care about, the mid lane, of course. I care about all the changes, but there were a lot of changes to itemization in particular for the mid lane, and I want to go over some of the big ones. But we're going to start with not item, but a relic in a way, and that's Vision Shard. I know if you've been playing Season 7, you've probably left the base with this post level 12, but the big thing about Vision Shard is just remembering to place it at the right times. I don't think placing it before minion spawn is the right call. It only lasts for a little bit of time, but this is the best way if you want to check mid camps or make sure, let's see if their little harpies are up on the other side of mid harpies now. I just drop a Vision Shard over that wall, our oracle's up. Things like that, I think, are the right way to be using Vision Shard. It just doesn't last long enough to really protect you for a long period of time. Another way to use it, if if your solo laner says, hey, jungler's in right jungle, drop it on your bottom rights, then you're protected, at least a little bit, until they blink on you and kill you, because assassins are OP, for sure, all of them. The big changes are, of course, to penetration. Spear of the Magus, frankly, was really busted for a long time, and so these sorts of changes were really necessary. What character should you be building Spear of the Magus on now? Not very many. Anubis, Kukulkan, the end, I think, in my mind. Look, this item is only really good if you're hitting the same ability over and over and over again. It's not like old Spear where it's like really good on Poseidon because the first 2 ticks of Whirlpool debuff them for Kraken. It's only gonna make your Whirlpool do more damage. It's not really what you want to be doing as Poseidon. For right now, I'd avoid Spear. Unless you're Anubis, in which case buy this early, it's nuts. You one-shot objectives with it. It's really, really good. Obsidian Shard was the other item that was really busted for a long time, if I can be honest with you guys. And it was time for this change to be happening. I'm not valuing Shard a whole lot right now. I think the only time we're going to see Shard in its current state is in competitive compositions where they're designed on killing the tanks first, set up by CC, because it's not on first ability hit that you get the extra pen. It's every first ability every 10 seconds or whatever that gets that, and if you miss it, you miss it. It's on cooldown. If you're getting Athena taunted into Whirlpool Kraken, sure, maybe Obsidian's better than Charon's coin, but for the most part, I would be sticking to this 20% pen option. That's Charon's coin. I'm really a big fan of going boots into Chronos Pendant, into Charon's coin right now, starting with Restored Artifact. So Chronos Pendant 2, boots, finish my Chronos Pendant, get Charon's coin. It's just, you need the 20% pen item in your build in my mind. It's just too hard to get it 40% otherwise. I think you need to get at least 30% pen every single game. Remember, Obsidian Shard before was giving you 45% pen all the time against tanks. Now you need to get it sporadically throughout the game. Build this item. This item's really, really good. Don't forget your pen. I talk about it all the time. It's more important than power. Stay tuned. We'll be right back here on Esports Update.
This Sanguine roster is one of the few rosters that have stayed the same. So we have a chance to see if maybe all that synergy they've built up over 2 years of playing together, it can be a difference maker here when everyone else is still getting into the groove. And I don't know if there's a team that's hungrier than this roster, man. Every time we talk to them, they look like they have that drive to win. Like they believe 100% that if you just give them the opportunity, if they just get to play right there with the big boys, then they could be up at the top. They might end up at the bottom of the standings, but I don't think you'll ever be able to sleep on this roster or not make sure that your prep is 100% because they'll definitely take some sets away. This is a team that never gives up. If they get their matches dragged to 60 minutes, those 5 players let me count Oxy, the coach, in there too. Those 6 guys all think that they can still come back and win it. So if you want to beat this team, you got to put them to bed quick or they might bounce back. I gotta be honest, man, this Renegades team to me they're a middle of the pack team. And we're all hoping that they'll come out and prove us wrong in that regard, but there's a ton of question marks. How well is Awesome Jake gonna play? Which Lasber are we gonna get? Are we gonna get the one towards the beginning of Season 6 or the one towards the end of Season 6 who got back into form? What about Solo or Troll? Can he mesh well with this team? We know he did with Splice, but this is a whole different squad of characters. It's gonna depend so much on how this team gels because every team is mechanically good. What you really need is a team that can get ahead of the meta, that can communicate well, that can bounce back from losses and still make sure that they're improving. Those are the things that we don't know if this Renegades team can do yet. We won't know until we start to see in Season 7.
Welcome back to Esports Update, everybody. Now, with all these changes to Season 7, I know everyone's clamoring for competitive play. What are the best gods? Now, how are teams going to use the Hand of the Gods and the Vision Shard, and what are going to be the mage builds? Well, you can watch streams and all that kind of stuff, or you can get prepared for our first look at competitive play. That's going to be the SCC, aka the SMITE Challenger Circuit, formerly known as a SMITE Minor League. And you might be saying, aggro, come on, man. It's Minor League. You know, all I care about is watching Pro League. I want to watch the best of the best play. Well, I got news for you, chump. Sorry, I didn't mean to attack you like that. The SMITE Challenger Circuit is still some of the best of the best. If you didn't watch the Minor League last year, frankly, you missed out. There were competitive teams from top to nearly bottom in both regions. Europe in particular was incredibly competitive from day one with a ton of talent. And look, these Season 7 rosters, you've been seeing them in the breaks and that kind of stuff. That'll continue as the show goes on. There are going to be some names that you think, you know, where's that guy playing? It's here in the SMITE Challenger Circuit, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. We're going to start our broadcast with them very, very soon, and I think that this is going to be our first real look at competitive play at all, and it's going to shape the meta one way or the other. Pro teams are going to start to scrim. You know, SPL starts up early spring, so right around now they're starting to put together where they want to practice and that kind of stuff. But what are they going to start with? Probably what they're watching in the SMITE Challenger Circuit. So this is the time to do it. Now, the great thing about the SCC is that it's completely open. I know that the SMITE Console League fans and everything like that are clamoring to watch their favorite players. This is where they've got a chance to show up and really make an impact, is in the SMITE Challenger Circuit. Now, if they don't make it into the SCC, because I think it'll be very, very competitive in both regions, there's still something else. They got the SMITE Open Circuit in order to try and compete there, and there will be some opportunities to move up into the upper brackets at that point. But make sure you stay tuned, because the first look at competitive play is going to shape the way that the meta begins in the SPL and in the SCC, SOC, all moving forward. It's all going to start here pretty soon. Now, you can also sign up and play if you want. If you go to esports.smitegame.com, you can find some more information there. You and your boys can get together and try and make it into the SCC, have us cast your games. Should be a pretty good time either way. But I warn you, better come with your A game, man. SCC is going to be competitive this year. Do not make any bones about it. Anytime Baskin is roaming around, everyone else is in trouble. That's what I'm saying. Well, it's Baskin. What else can you do about that? Stay tuned here on Esports Update. We'll be right back.
So Unite is this team on paper that I'm looking at and I'm going, what are they going to do this year? It feels like it's got a lot of members that once upon a time were the top of the league. We've got, you know, the original Cog Red boys playing together. They played on Memory of Game. You got Hurrywind, who was around the scenes in the early days too. Variety that got to 2 World Championships. Great. But can they still do it now in Season 7 as a roster together? Has the experiences through the past years really catapulted them to a point now where they could go in and win a world title? I don't know. I think it's really going to come down to, for this team, what they choose to do with the meta and to make sure they facilitate the right players on this team. They all have individual ability that puts them in the upper echelon of the league in terms of their abilities in individual roles, but can this chemistry work out for them when it comes to taking on a straight up 5v5 of another team? Top 4 team for me, if they can get it to click.
This year, Obey is a chip on their shoulder kind of team. It feels like every person on this roster is going to be coming in with something to prove. You've got Wowie, you have Inbound coming in from the console league, you have Wolfie, who was on Rival during their big surge. Obviously, it always feels like Weekend has to come and improve. He belongs in the SPL because he undeservedly gets a lot of flack. And then there's Ducky. He's like one of those guys that all the pro players tells you is really a strong mechanical player, like a top player in his position, but you never get to actually see it on the battleground. He's got something to prove coming into this year. Obviously, I'm super open to being proved wrong in that, and halfway through the season, we're all singing the praises of Wolfie Weekend as being this scary mid-jungle combination, but until I actually see it on the battleground right now, I'm expecting this to be one of the bottom-end teams.
Welcome back, everybody. This is just the first of many esports updates this year, so we'd love to hear your feedback on what you'd like to see more of. Of course, we've got some things in the works, so this is not the final form, so to speak, of esports update, but any suggestions you have, we're all ears. At SMITEPro on Twitter, at Agro if you want to get to me directly. And we hope you'll continue watching. I think it's going to be a great year. Also, this is the last episode we've got pre-competition. Next time we're here on Esports Update, 2 weeks from now, it's going to be actual highlights of what we've seen, some breakdowns of what we expected to see versus what we're actually seeing. I can't wait, man. Competitive Smite right around the corner, and that's what we love to see. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in 2 weeks here on Esports Update.